Hello, Easy Nation. Alright, guys, welcome to another episode to the Darth Easy's Movie Anatomy. My speaker name messed up because I just said all this again, but let's try again. Alright, hello, Easy Nation, and welcome to another episode of Darth Easy's Movie Anatomy. I hope you all had a new year, and welcome to the 2019 movie season. I'm looking forward to another season of Darth Easy's Movie Anatomy. Last season was kind of short, but we started it at Thanksgiving or the week before Thanksgiving. And I have a lot of movies I want to watch and a lot of movies coming out this year I'm looking forward to. The 2019 movie season has, I guess, started with this week at theaters. There's that horror movie out, but I'm not watching that. So, or The Escape Room. Actually, I don't know if I'm watching it. I'm actually still in 2018, so I'm still in the past, but it's getting ready to be 2019. I'm looking forward to it because 2018 was a rough year on me, on my personal life, and the movies weren't as good as 2017 were. So I'm hoping we can finish out this decade because I think it's been a pretty good decade for movies. Some people might disagree with me, but I thought this decade was pretty good. So to reintroduce the show, we're starting this year out right. So every week on the Darth Easy's Movie Anatomy, I like to pick a movie that's very similar to a movie that's coming out in theaters right now. Well, I didn't really want to review it. I didn't really want to do a movie anatomy on a stupid horror film. And there's going to be a bunch of weeks. Well, I say that, but really there isn't going to be a bunch of weeks where I can just do whatever I want like I did last season. So this week, I'm going to do the first movie, and that's one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick franchises that when I have an off week, I can do whatever I want, and I can go into some of these franchises. I'm going to do a bunch of them. I'm going to do the Star Wars franchise eventually. I want to do the Harry Potter franchise. I want to do some others, like I want to finish the Rockies probably after I get done with all that. The Godfather, the Bournes. There's all kinds of series I would like to do movie anatomies on. But we're going to start out with, we're going to do Lord of the Rings. And who knows how long this is going to take. I have it scheduled, or I'll finish this around the time of April. It might even be May. But I am looking forward to talking about Lord of the Rings. And we're talking about The Fellowship of the Ring today. This movie was released in 2001. And I've added a new segment of the show where I watch the trailer. It's basically, I pick up the trailer from whenever the movie was released and watch it. And then I'll talk about little highlights of the trailer. So, without further delay, let's talk about Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Rings trailer. Let's watch it right now. Alright, so we're getting started. Now this is a 2001 trailer. Like, trailers have really gotten bigger today, but let's see how the trailer is, because I actually haven't watched it because I want to watch it the first time in front of all y'all. Alright, you see the river.
Believed lost for centuries. It has now been found.
Well, that line wasn't used. It's a secret. It's safe. See the Nazgul.
One ring forged by the Dark Lord's hand.
Huh, okay.
Some
This is actually a pretty good trailer. I'm kind of surprised.
He's seeking it all. His thought is bent on it.
So I think this is actually pretty good because it's actually showing us the world, Middle Earth. Because this is our first introduction to the Middle Earth movies. Introducing the hero of Frodo, introducing the great threat. I actually really like that. Its power corrupts all who desire it. Oh, Sean Bean, and Viggo Mortensen.
The ring must be destroyed.
It was made in the fires of Mount Doom. There can it be unmade.
Huh. Some of these scenes they use the two towers and all that.
I'm afraid to do it.
So now all this trailer is from just the Fellowship.
Simply walk into Mordor.
There is no other way. There's something down there.
Oh, Gollum, you're my precious. Of course, that's from Two Towers. Okay, so the trailer ends with Frodo putting the ring on.
Yes.
Not nearly frightened enough.
Alright, so that was the trailer to Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring. I don't know if that will be exciting. I don't know if I'll keep doing this segment of the show. But let's get talking about Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring. Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring was a movie that was released in 2001. I believe they shot the movies in 99 to 2000, and they shot all three of these movies all at the same time. And that was kind of a rare thing to do, as to see other movies do that too. I mean, Peter Jackson would do it again for like his Hobbit films. I don't know if I'll watch the Hobbit films. I don't like those movies as much as the Lord of the Rings. But the thing about this movie is Lord of the Rings was my Star Wars growing up, because I was 10 years old when Lord of the Rings: The Fellowship of the Ring came out. So I didn't really know going into Lord of the Rings would I like it, would I love it. And to be honest with you, I love the Lord of the Rings. I've watched them so many times. I could quote the movie, that and Harry Potter. I love the Lord of the Rings movies. They were some of my favorites. So the thing about this movie is, so the basic story of Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring, it begins with this great prologue where it gives us kind of the history of Middle-earth and about the history of the One Ring and all the other rings, and it shows the Dark Lord Sauron that he has control of the earth, basically, and that he somehow ends up getting destroyed or defeated by Isildur. And the ring had a chance to be destroyed, but Isildur kept the ring, and he loses the ring down the river, and the ring is lost, and Gollum finds it, and eventually Bilbo picks up the ring, and then we get to our story, where we see the Shire, and we're introduced to our hero, Frodo Baggins, as Gandalf is coming to the town. Bilbo gives the ring to Frodo, and Bilbo and Frodo, basically, he doesn't even know what the ring is. Gandalf tells him to put it in an envelope, and Gandalf realizes what this is. He realizes this is the One Ring that belonged to the Dark Lord Sauron. We have to destroy it, because if Sauron gets this ring, then it'll be the end of Middle-earth. Frodo just wants to hide it. He doesn't want to do it, and that's where the kind of the story is. He's a reluctant hero who doesn't really want to, he doesn't want all this responsibility, but he has to do this, otherwise it's the end of the world. And Gollum, the Mordor captures Gollum, and Gollum gives up the name of Shire Baggins, and the Nine go after him, the Nazgul, the Ringwraiths, and these are like dark cloaked creatures who they can't be killed, they can't be stopped, and and the only way you can really stop them is I don't think there is a way to stop them. You can only just slow them down with fire and something like that. So the Nazgul are hunting down Frodo, and Frodo and Samwise Gamgee, they go off, they leave the Shire, and they team up with Pippin and Merry, two other hobbits, and they have to go to Bree to wait on Gandalf. Well, Gandalf, I'll get my buddy Saruman the White to help us out. Well, Saruman, that doesn't really work out for Gandalf, because Saruman has turned to the dark side, basically. The White Wizard has fallen to the enemy. And Saruman basically imprisons Gandalf, and Gandalf has to flee using the eagles. And so Frodo and team up with Aragorn, otherwise known as Strider, the Lone Ranger, the Ranger of the I forget what the Rangers are called, the Nazarene or something like that. So the hobbits and Aragorn they're going to Rivendell, a place where the ring might be safe, and they go and they're going along their way, and the Nazgul find the hobbits after they try to make some food, and Frodo gets stabbed with a Nazgul blade, and it really hurts him. And then we're introduced to Arwen, Aragorn's love interest. She takes Frodo to Rivendell, where they're protected by the elves. And that's really the first half of the movie. And I really enjoyed the Nazgul. I love the chase scene. I love seeing Aragorn. Aragorn is such a great character in all three of these movies. Other things that happens. So once they get to Rivendell, Elrond, the Lord of Rivendell, has called a gathering of the lords and people of Middle Earth to figure out what to do with this one ring. They invite Boromir, they invite a bunch of dwarves, they invite the elves, there's Aragorn, Gandalf's there, and they're trying to figure it out. And Boromir, played by Sean Bean is saying, like, well, this is a gift. Why don't we use this ring to destroy the... To use it against him, but the ring can't be destroyed because the ring only serves one master. The ring wants to be found by Sauron. He wants to be returned to him, and so Frodo just feels the calling, and he just goes off and he says, "I will take it. I will take the ring to Mordor. I don't know the way." And then Gandalf says, "I'll lead you as long as it's your burden to bear." And then Aragorn says, "I will give my life and death. If I can help you, I will. You have my sword, Legolas. You have my bow, and Gimli, and my axe." And then Sean Bean, Boromir says, like, you had the fate of us all, little one. If this is the will of the council, the Gondor will see it through. And then the 4 hobbits, and we have 9 companions. And you shall be the Fellowship of the Ring. And that takes us to our second half of the movie, where the Fellowship of the Ring has to try to get to Mordor. And to get to Mordor, they go down so many paths, but eventually they go down to the mines of Moria. And Moria is a place that Gandalf doesn't really want to go to, because it's a place surrounded by evil. But Gimli's saying, "Oh, my cousin, Balin, who we see in the Hobbit movies, is the Lord of Moria." And it doesn't work out for him going down this path, because they find out the goblins have overrun Moria. And there's an even darker creature called the Balrog. The battle scene, though, the fight when all the goblins are fighting the Fellowship in Balin's tomb, is pretty great. It's a pretty great It's just good action to watch on the screen. And Frodo gets hit by a spear, but he has Bilbo's Mithril. Mithril is stronger than it can protect you from almost anything. And in the extended edition, which is the version I watch, and really the extended editions are the best way to watch the movies, in my personal opinion. Two Towers is a little weaker. I'll talk about that when I get to the Two Towers episode of this show, but whenever he gets down, Gandalf tells Gimli that the Mithril is worth more than the entire lands of the Shire, and that's kind of crazy. So they get through. They are trying to get through Moria, and then they attract the attention of the Balrog, and the Balrog fights Gandalf, and Gandalf has to sacrifice himself. And that music that plays in the movie is incredible. Howard Shore's score for Lord of the Rings is incredible, and like you heard in the beginning of it, I mean, the hardest thing about this episode is picking the right song to use. Because the Fellowship of the Ring, I mean, you have the Concerned Hobbits theme, which I have to use that for the first episode. But there's also the theme when Gandalf dies, or he has to fight the Balrog, and fight, you fools! And it's just such an incredible score to listen to, and I love Lord of the Rings score. But they lose Gandalf, and they go off to Lothlorien, where they the elf Galadriel, who gives them the protection of Lothlorien, and she gets in the heads of a bunch of people like Boromir. Boromir came and look at her. Gimli falls in love, and she and Frodo have this conversation, and he says, "I don't want to do this, and I can't do this alone." And she gives a little hope. And there's a great quote I'll talk about when I get to the movie quotes part of the show. So the Fellowship of the Ring, they go off, they go down the river to get to Mordor, and basically Saruman has sent his Uruk-hai to hunt after the Fellowship of the Ring, the Fellowship, and they track him down. Frodo decides to leave the Fellowship. Boromir tries to take the ring, and Boromir is really a guy. The ring made him crazy. He's a good guy. It's just the ring brings out the worst kind of person inside of you, and it's just something, it kind of happens when you're obsessed with this kind of thing. And he holds that ring once, and it kind of snares him and makes him go crazy. And the thing about, the death of Boromir is such a sad scene when he gets shot and the music plays. Like I said, Howard Shore's score is amazing, and he dies and sacrifices himself for the hobbits, but he fails, and it's a really sad scene. And him and Aragorn form this friendship and brothership, where Aragorn is the reluctant ranger who he doesn't want to be king. He could be king of Gondor if he really wants to, but he doesn't want that path. He doesn't want to do it. But he knows he's really the only person who can. And it's what Galadriel tells him in the extended cut of the movie, where Galadriel tells Aragorn, that says you have a fate, you have a choice. Either one, you can rise above all your kin and become the king of Gondor, or two, you could die and fall into darkness like the rest of your kin. And it calls him Elisar, the king, and this is such a good movie. The battle scene of them fighting the Uruk-hai are great, and I love that Peter Jackson used actual practical effects, used costumes and stuff instead of just CGI like he would do in his the Hobbit films. Anyways, the Fellowship breaks up. Pippin and Merry get taken by the Uruk-hai. Frodo goes off on his own, but Sam follows along with him to Mordor because he made a promise. Mr. Frodo, I made a promise. And Samwise, I will talk about Sam more in the next two movies than this movie, but Sam is my favorite Lord of the Rings character, and like I said, I will talk about him more when I get to Two Towers of Return of the King. But that decision when he's drowning in the lake and Frodo picks him up, he says, I made a promise, Mr. Frodo. A promise. Don't you leave him, Samwise Gamgee. And I don't mean to. And Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, they go after chasing Pippin and Merry and stop these Uruk-hai, and that takes us into the end of the movie where they look at Mount Doom and they're like, well, I guess it's time to begin. And Frodo's like, I'm glad you're with me, Sam. And then the movie ends. And yeah, that's Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. It's such an incredible movie. And let's get more into talking about the show. So let's get right into the thesis statement. The thesis statement is your most powerful statement about this movie. This is what you would, if you're at a bar and they start talking about Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, this is what you would say that it's the one thing and the only thing really about the movie. And my thesis statement, this is kind of a weak thesis statement in my opinion, but I couldn't really come up with a good one. But I would say this is the best film since Star Wars to introduce us to a world and own it. Because really, Lord of the Rings, the Middle-earth world, is such an incredible world to get into. And it's just incredible. I mean, ever since, like, Star Wars, when you saw the first Star Wars for the first time, it completely showed us this world. And Lord of the Rings did the same thing with Fellowship of the Ring. And it really brought the life of J.R.R. Tolkien, a famed book writer. It's just an incredible movie. It's a really great introduction. And really, I think Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Rings is the second best Lord of the Rings film. because I think Return of the King is the best. I think Two Towers is the weakest. And that's just my opinion. So let's talk about some of the wow moments of this movie. The wow moment is like, wow, I can't. You're waiting, you're watching the movie, and you're like, wow, that was awesome. I can't wait to see the rest of this movie. And I had about 5 wow moments in this movie. And my favorite moment, probably of the movie, is probably the death of Boromir. And there's some other great scenes. I even mentioned like Frodo turning invisible for the first time. The prologue is so incredible because it basically shows us, explains to us this world we're in. The death and Bilbo turning invisible whenever he's giving his speech. He said, you know what, fuck you all, I'm out. And the Balrog fight with Gandalf is great. Galadriel showing up, I think she's good in it. But my wow moment is the death of Boromir. I think Boromir is incredible. I just think he's the best part of this movie, or that fight when he gets killed and you really feel it, and Aragorn comes and saves him. I just think it's a moment where Boromir knows he messed up, and it's his path of redemption, really. So now let's get into the star profile. We're looking into a lot of the actors' careers since this movie, before this movie, and we're talking about it right now. So there's a lot of people to talk about, and I did not do everybody because there's a big cast, so I'm only talking about 6 people today, and then when I do Two Towers, Return of the King, I'll talk about the rest of them. So first we're going to talk about Peter Jackson. Peter Jackson's the director of this movie. Really, he didn't do much. He would later go on to do King Kong and the Hobbit series, and he's become a producer. He produces more than he actually directs anymore. I mean, he just produced that one movie, The Mortal Engines. He directed that documentary that just came out about World War I, and it's supposed to look super realistic, and I'm really looking forward to watching that once I can find it. But yeah, that looks good. But yeah, Peter Jackson, he's a famed producer, great director, and this film series really made Peter Jackson's career. Sean Bean was already an established actor. He was in Patriot Games, he was in GoldenEye, but I would say he's had a really good career. I would say Lord of the Rings was probably the high of his career, but he's been in some other stuff. Probably his most famous role was probably Game of Thrones, where he goes back into this fantasy world as Ned Stark, and Ned Stark has so much honor, and his character is just left such an impact on the Game of Thrones world that Sean Bean did such a good job in that role. And he's been in some other things. He was in The Martian a few years ago, and he's done a lot of TV too. So Sean Bean's had a great career. Ian Holm was the guy who played Bilbo Baggins, and he has a very small role in this film, but he is very good in this film. Really, the only other film I could tell you he's in is Alien. He plays the robot or the android in that film, and I thought he did a good job in that. But I really think he's good in Lord of the Rings. Cate Blanchett has had a very good career, and she's probably the most successful actress in the entire cast. This was a very, very minor role for her, and she did a lot of films before this, and she went on to do like Aviator, Carol, and some other films, and she is probably, like I said, I wanted to talk about Cate Blanchett this episode, in this movie, because this is her most she's in the other movies. Like, she has like one speech she gives in the Two Towers, but that's it. What else? The other person to talk about is Billy Boy. Billy Boy, this was the height of his career. This is the guy who played Pippin. He hasn't done anything since. I think he's done some TV roles, but I think he's more of a singer anyways. And finally, Liv Tyler. Liv Tyler, she was in Armageddon. She would later be in Incredible Hulk, and she was in the TV show The Leftovers, and I actually think she was really good in The Leftovers. And yeah, that's the star profile. We'll talk more about the rest of the cast when we get to the second and third movies. I guess let me do one more. I forgot about him. Hugo Weaving as Elrond. He is great in this movie. Before this, he was in The Matrix. He would go on and do Captain America. So yeah, that's really the cast of Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring for now. There's more people to talk about, but I'll talk about that in the second, in the Two Towers, and in the Return of the King. So now it's time for best quotes. I have a lot of quotes here, and I'm going to list off a few of them. A wizard is never late, Frodo. nor is he ugly. He arrives exactly when he means to. Love that quote. I mean, a couple of them. I have a lot of Gandalf quotes. You, children, boss. Love that quote. And another quote from another quote. One of my favorites because it's from my favorite character. I may have promised, Mr. Frodo. I promise. Don't leave him, Samwise Gamgee. And I don't mean to. I don't mean to. Love that quote. And the quote from Galadriel, even the smallest person can change the course of the future. And that's one thing I like about this movie is that the hobbits are they're the underdog character because they're short, they're small, they're not athletic or anything, but they're the characters who you really root for, and it's just incredible. And the final quote, I think this is I mean, you can put this on posters, you can make this your senior quotes. So do all who live to see difficult times, but it is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is to do with the time that is given to us. I love that quote, and it's just, I think it really describes Lord of the Rings perfectly. And it's a great motivational quote if you're looking for motivational pictures and stuff. Alright guys, so it's time to rank this film. So every week we do a ranking, I have all kinds of rankings for these films. We have instant classic. We have movies that you want to go outside and hit it with a bat. There are movies you think are good once and every few years is a film, or films you think are just rewatchable. I think Lord of the Rings: Fellowship of the Ring is an instant classic. I think it's just an incredible film. It's a staple. It brought back fantasy films, but really after Lord of the Rings there wasn't any fantasy films. But Lord of the Rings really, there are people who always are still wanting to say, well, what could be the next Lord of the Rings? What could be the next Star Wars? And Lord of the Rings was the next Star Wars movie ever since the originals. And I love this. I love this film. And yeah, that's movie anatomy on Lord of the Rings: The Fellowship of the Ring. And guys, so now it's time to move on to the pitch. So this is the part of the show where I talk about what's coming out next week. Next week, Bryan Cranston has a movie called The Upside with Kevin Hart. I could have done a Kevin Hart movie, but Kevin Hart only has about 2 good movies. And I wanted to do one on Bryan Cranston. Bryan Cranston doesn't have a lot of movies. There's a bunch of them I could have picked, but I'm picking the movie he has a really small role in. So the movie I am watching next week is, I'm watching Argo. Argo, directed by Ben Affleck, won Best Picture in 2012. I'm watching Argo, and it'll be out next week. So, guys, if you like this video, click this thumbs up button on YouTube, like and subscribe, tell your friends about it. Let's get this podcast booming. That way I can make more and more, and maybe even do special episodes. But I can't do that unless I get the viewership. If I don't get the viewership, I have to keep it at where it is, which is fine because I'm doing this more for myself and anything. But guys, that's Lord of the Rings: Fellowship of the Ring. Guys, I'll talk to y'all next week. Bye.